Hi everyone, I am Nichol Carranza. I am the community relations person and stakeholder engagement for our Martinez Renewable Fuels project. I'm also a board member for the Concord Chamber. So I really appreciate everyone joining today. This is a really important project for Marathon and, the Contra Costa and the Bay Area and California. So, one of the things that I'm reaching out to as far as stakeholders is not only residents and local electeds, but also businesses, because I'm pretty confident that our presence in the community helps drive some of the income for our local businesses. So I've been talking to folks as we use their services, and this is a great forum. So I appreciate you, Melissa and William, to give me the platform to talk about this and take questions. I just want to say that Bob Brown from WISPA is on, and he's definitely an expert in refining and the gas and oil industry. So I feel like if there are any technical questions, I'll punt to you, Bob, just letting you know in advance.
No problem, no problem.
Okay, great. I feel like I have a partner here. Steve was supposed to join us, so I don't know if something came up, but I'll do my best to get through the slides that he typically does. And Melissa, if you can give me a heads up if he joins.
Sure.
How do I close my chat? I don't want to close Zoom.
You ready for me to share the screen, Nicole?
Sure, go ahead. Okay, perfect. I'm going to turn off my camera so you're not distracted. Okay, can everyone hear me all right? Okay, so this presentation is about the Renewable Fuels project, and Steve Koenig is our state government relations director. He actually manages government relations for the state of California, but also state government relations in a majority of the West Coast. So Utah, Washington, Alaska, and Salt Lake City. Well, that's Utah. Again, myself, I manage all the community relations, which means investments in our nonprofits, our local nonprofits, our schools, and basically just out there representing Marathon and our reputation in the community. So go ahead and do the next slide, please. So just really quickly, standard forward-looking statement. What this means is that the things in this presentation are anticipated. So there's no, guarantee that this project will come to fruition without the support of our stakeholders. And also, it's not an indication of future performance for the company. Next slide. All right, so just a little bit about Marathon. As many of you know, we really just entered the community, I think in 2019. So prior to 2019, Marathon did not have a presence in California. We were previously Tesoro and Endeavor and many other names before that. So just a little bit about the company. It's established in 1887. They've been in business more than 130 years. We are headquartered in Findlay, Ohio, and we have 16 refineries across the United States. So with their acquisition, with Marathon's acquisition of Tesoro, they were able to basically get a national presence, and they have, we operate a logistics pipelines, marine terminals. I think there are some 3,500 or 5,000 gas stations across the country. So if you're from the East Coast or you've ever lived on the East Coast or visited, you have likely seen Marathon stations. We consider ourselves to be a leader in the environmental space, and I'll talk about some of our other renewable projects here shortly. So next slide. So just a quick piece about our renewables portfolio. So Martinez is really our latest endeavor for a project to convert to renewable fuels. We already have a renewable fuels facility in Dickinson, North Dakota. We have a biodiesel facility in Cincinnati, Ohio. And biodiesel is different from renewable diesel, so I will touch on that as we get further on. We work with Fulcrum Bioenergy on producing or processing waste to biocrude. Crude is, just really quickly, it is a feedstock that goes into the refinery, so that, you know, the output is gasoline and lighter fuels like gasoline, diesel, propane, I don't think kerosene, but basically that is what we bring in. Just imagine, you know, the really thick crude oil that comes in and it's refined. So there is a biocrude processing plant that we also have in our system. And then Virent Inc. is a subsidiary that we have to help us with the bio-based feedstocks. Next slides. All right, so just a little bit about the Martinez facility. So hopefully all of you know where we are. We're right there when you come down Highway 4 from Pittsburgh. You can see us off to the right, sort of off of Arnold Industrial Way. We're actually in unincorporated Martinez, but our south entrance is in Concord, right by the drive-in. So if you've ever been over that area, that's us. We're on 2,200 acres. So from that southern entrance that I mentioned all the way out to the Suisun Bay, that is our footprint. And we also, we're adjacent to Lower Walnut Creek, which that's the creek that runs all through Contra Costa, or through this East Bay from Walnut Creek. So we first began in 1905. We've been here over 100 years and began as Associated Oil. And a little fun fact that I like is that the oil was originally established to provide fuel to the locomotives because we sit on 2 train tracks. I think it's like Southern Pacific, the other one, the other main railroad. And so we were initially established to provide fuel to those. So again, purchased by Marathon in late 2018, didn't really actually become Marathon until 2019. And so the impetus for the Renewable Fuels project here in Martinez, although it was already being planned and ideated at the corporate level, we decided to idle our refinery in April of 2020, and that coincided with the pandemic and the loss of demand in the area. And so in October, there was a decision to permanently idle the facility. So we are no longer producing petroleum products. We are still a terminal. That means we bring in and transport out finished products like gasoline and diesel, but we are not making it anymore at the Martinez facility. So again, in February 2021, we announced that we would be working towards a renewable fuels facility here. Next slide, get some water. Okay, so just want to go over a couple of benefits for the project. The project's really important because it helps California meet its climate goals. As you know, Newsom and others have been really focused on lowering the carbon emissions in the state. And so I believe we're being fairly innovative in, being on that pathway as well. So for this project, it's going to be a 60% reduction in greenhouse gases. We will be at the rate of approximately 730 million gallons per year of renewable fuels. And I want to say, gosh, that's just about a quarter of what we used to produce in petroleum. So I'm not sure how that will increase over the years, but right now it's about the current demand that we have and what our capabilities are. 70% reduction in criteria air pollutants, which is, I think that's really good in considering we already are located in the most stringent air quality requirements in the state of California, and that means also within the country, right? Because California is already gallons less water, so water to cool the products in the facility. So a couple of fast facts. Our feedstocks will no longer be crude oil. As I mentioned, the feedstocks that go into the process will be corn oil, soybean oil, animal fats, and used cooking oil. So, talking to some of the big producers of, like Tyson and things like that, where they probably make 5 million chicken nuggets a year, right? So, used cooking oil in that sense. The finished products that we will have are renewable diesel and renewable propane at this time. So the timeline keeps shifting a little bit, but we are planning to have our startup in the second half, probably late 2022 at this point. And the goal is to achieve full capacity at the end of 23. And as many of you know, we did a significant reduction in employees, which we did really focus on just transition as far as helping them get training, relocating to other plants. You know, some people were offered generous retirement packages and severance package. So I think as a company, we were really focused on helping keep those folks whole. And a number of people actually got hired at other local refineries. So when we get into this new phase of our business, we'll probably have about 150 to 160 full-time employees. That number has changed, and it's not something that we are really able to predict at this time. So right now we're in the middle of our permitting process, and I'll go over that timeline later, but our permit applications have been submitted with the various agencies here in the Bay Area, such as the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. I believe we've already submitted our environmental impact review, and that's being reviewed. And then at some point there'll be a public comment period. So we're already starting to plan and put the pieces in place to launch the operation. Okay, next slide. All right, so these are some of the things that are not really my slides, but I'm going to do my best. So just from left to right, you know, you can see the renewable fuels in the feedstock acquisition column that goes into existing inbound logistics. So some of these things are already in place as we used to process petroleum products. So transporting that through a combination of truck, rail car, barge into our facility. We're no longer really considering ourselves a refinery. So you're going to hear facility more often. And if you hear refinery, that's really just a slip. Terminals, we still are a terminal. So again, we store and we transfer products in and out of the location, but we're not producing them here. So for processing, it will be renewable fuels, renewable diesel. That's a different, it's the same processing operation, but we're modifying equipment to accommodate these new feedstocks. And then outbound logistics, pretty much the same, you know, train, truck, third-party companies who use our products, and also shipping them out via barge and pipeline. And then again, marketing and sales, the diesel will be available at our branded and non-branded stores. And so if you don't know this, we provide fuels to like Costco and Safeway, and then Arco are the local stations, local gas stations that you know of, and those are actually our brand. And the interesting thing is all of those particular retailers are somewhat less expensive than our competitors. And so I think that's quite interesting, but you know, most of you are familiar with the gas prices and where to get the best prices in town.
What were those, Nicole, what were those, Arco, and what were the other ones?
So we, even as Tesoro, Arco was our brand, but it's been difficult to sort of make ourselves known publicly because we didn't have Tesoro stations, and now we don't have Marathon stations. Currently we have Arco. Marathon owns the Speedway brand here.
Okay.
But we are spinning that off. So that won't be our brand soon.
Oh, okay.
And I know we had contracts with Costco and Safeway, but if folks don't know this, it's almost like we provide a generic product to some of our other competitors. So I just look at it like that's how we're able to keep our costs low, is sort of having this unbranded product that's available to these other competitors.
Yeah, it's something just to share with the group. All the unbranded smaller stations you see around the Bay Area, all our refineries provide fuels to those, or they provide fuels to all the stations. You know, what delineates them from, say, a Chevron is the additive that Chevron does with the Techron, or Shell with, what is it?
E-Tech.
That's what delineates the brand part of it, but just an aside.
Right. And if you've ever visited our plant, we have these bays in the back where these other refiners will come in and get our product, and then they pull into the bay, labeled VTech and Techron, and they add that product into the truck and mix it, and then it becomes a proprietary blend for those competitors. All right, go ahead to the next slide, please. All right, so here's our tentative project timeline, and it has been pushed back for different reasons, and I would say last week or so, it got pushed back a little further. I don't really know the reason for that, but basically the project was approved in February. We started doing our public scoping meetings in March, and that's also when we began our community listening and education tour. I've presented this presentation to neighborhood groups, industry groups, like for instance, the town of Clyde, which is our neighbor. We definitely make time to talk to them. We're putting out collateral. We have a website, to give people more information, which I'll share at the end. So that's a big factor for us, because I know the community either doesn't know about this or they have questions about it. And we also want to hear their concerns so that we can address them and, give them the information they're looking for. So in August, that hasn't happened yet. So in August, we will publish our environmental impact report. And that was supposed to happen in July, which starts our open comment period. And what that means is once that's published, our detractors and our supporters will be able to go and express their either support or opposition to the project. We hope that people are supporting it. And then the Board of Supervisors, I believe, makes the decision, and that's expected in October, if all goes well. And then again, I mentioned that we hope to be online producing in late 2022, full capacity by the end of 23. Okay. Oh, you know what? It says full conversion capacity online. It was 48,000 barrels per day. That means that's our capacity, not necessarily what we produce every day, but just to give you, something to compare it to. Previously we were producing 166,000 barrels per day, which is into the millions. So we are going to be a much smaller operation, hence the fewer employees. But I'll go into some more detail about the positives here. So next slide. All right, so some project construction facts. We will be repurposing about 7 of our units. If folks don't know much about that process, I won't get too detailed, but we have blending, hydrocracking. There are a bunch of processes. It's almost like a large chemistry set that brings crude into a refined product, but we will be repurposing what we have already. As I mentioned, the processing system is much the same with the 2 different products. So we'll have 2 new units, a pretreatment unit, the largest in the world. We are upgrading our wastewater treatment plant, and also I think adding a new like an offshoot of that to help clean out the water that comes from the renewable diesel. And then for the building trades for construction, so we expect to have 4 million project hours. That means the number of hours for contractors and employees will be about 4 million. So, that's labor into our community, jobs, and that is a positive. And so we expect to have about 1,400 contractors on site at the peak of construction, and that's not including employees. We've always had a large contract workforce at the refinery during different maintenance times and just based on what we're doing. So we still plan to do that. Next slide. All right, so we're still focused on safety. That's really been, it's a high priority for us. We're dealing with chemicals that can be very dangerous. We're not baking cookies over here. So there's an intensive focus on safety. It's part of the work culture. There's a huge focus on process safety, which are, all of the things we do to keep our facility safe, avoid catastrophic events, kind of like your checklist of everything you do when you're working in the facility. And then also a huge, obviously, focus on personal safety. We'll be decommissioning some of the units. They actually will be removed. That's going to take time, but you would see a change in the skyline. I think some things will be removed. So we're still, continuing to do our cleanings, inspections, monitoring, and we also carefully evaluate contractors or anybody working at the facility. Next slide. And this is my part, but we're continuing to be focused on safety and serving the community. So we'll also continue to be focused on making a positive impact. In 2019, 2020, our budget sort of spanned across 2 years, but we focused on STEM education, public safety, environment, and community need. So as you see in the pictures on the right, we host high school students and college students at the facility, talk about the work we do, career exploration, hopefully building that workforce pipeline that's so badly needed here for our industry and the industry along the northern waterfront. We also, support community need places like Monument Impact. And then as you can see, we support the food bank, but it's a nice partnership with Concord High School. That picture in particular, we get about 160 participants, and they trick or treat for food bags on the night of Halloween. And I think the last year we did it before the pandemic, they raised 16,000 pounds of food in one night for the food bank. So we sponsor that, and hopefully we'll be able to do it again this year. So if you live in Concord, look for that bag on your porch. I just want to say before we wrap up, this is the last slide, is that we have expanded our giving areas to give us more flexibility. So instead of public safety and community need, we now do thriving communities. So that gives us the flexibility to focus on the unhoused population, food insecurities, anything that basically regionally is a focus. And then STEM education has expanded to include and focus on vocational education. So again, building that workforce. And then as always, environmental stewardship is a key priority. Next slide. All right, so we do have a live website, Marathon Martinez Renewables. If you visit the website, there will be some simplified videos. There will be information about our community partners, information about the project, and also a tab that we've added, which is show your support. So you can sign up there for updates, which means you would get a notification when we enter that open comment period. And we're also going to have an activation email there, which would make it turnkey for you to show your support. It will, generate an email in your name to the decision makers. So that is our outreach plan and our commitment, and the update on operations, and then also how you could support as a business community. I appreciate your time, and we're ready to take your questions.
Nicole, I have a question for you. How many refineries are there in the United States that are similar to Marathon at this time?
You mean the renewable fuels, or?
That is correct. Renewable fuels.
Okay, that's probably a better question for Bob. He has the 50,000 foot view.
Yeah, I don't have a number, but I know that obviously, I think the slide on there showed that the various Marathon properties and assets across the country. I know the other big renewable diesel project in the Bay Area, 2 of the 5 facilities are going to all renewable diesel. That's Phillips 66 over in Rodeo. Valero also has a big footprint. Marathon. I mean, all the majors are looking into or have assets that are exploring this. So when it comes to renewable liquid fuels, you'll see more and more pop up around the country. But certainly, a very large footprint here in the Bay Area, leading the way.
Thanks,
Excellent.
Bob. And I just want to add one piece to that, because it's not in the deck. is that the renewable diesel is called a drop-in replacement. That means if you have diesel vehicles, you do not need to modify the engine. It can just be put right into your gas tank. So basically, when you pull up to our station, this is live, you're just going to use the same pump and it's going to say renewable diesel. And so that is different from biodiesel. I try to make that distinction because it's actually cleaner at the tailpipe. There's some other benefits that are very technical, but if you hear people calling it biodiesel, that is not the correct term for our project. We are doing renewable diesel. Are there any other differences, Bob, that sets those two apart?
No petroleum product in renewable versus biodiesel. Biodiesel, I think, is like a 20% in terms of renewables, so it's much less. So like you say, much more much more sustainable product in terms of all renewable.
Okay.
Hi, this is Sandy Hunter, and a longtime supplier to Marathon, Tosco, to Sorrow, on and on and on. Been calling on that plant for about 30 years. That being said, things have changed up and most of my friends are either retired or moved on. I would still like to be part of this, of course, but I'm not sure who the main contact is. That's one question. I would like some help with that. But secondly, my understanding is many of these feedstocks, people have refiners, clean fuel people have contracts already in place for suppliers of these feedstocks that you mentioned. I'm assuming you guys do too, and is that in California or is that outside of California?
Well, I don't particularly know the answer to where we're sourcing it from, and I do know that that's confidential at this point. It's a competitive type of or I don't know what you would call it, but it's anti-competitive. We don't share that particularly, but as I mentioned, we'll be dealing with some of the larger producers of used animal fats and things of that nature. If they don't have a source here in California, I would imagine it's still in the United States. But I also wanted to ask what you provide as a supplier to the refinery so I can help get you in contact with the right person.
Oh, spectacular. Custom mechanical components. We dealt with turbines, compressors, whatever, special fasteners, things that were not off the shelf, pump shafts, stuff like that, that were not easily obtained from, say, an OEM or whatever. Sometimes the guys had some brilliant ideas about being safer out in the field, and they'd come to us and say, okay, this is what I'm thinking. Can you make this thing? And so we've done many, many special projects.
Okay, and we do have new leadership over those disciplines within the facility. So I can most likely put you in contact with the right person. And I think just to clarify what Sandy's saying, correct me if I'm wrong, we've been there 105 years. A lot of times some of our equipment is no longer manufactured. So a lot of times we have to do custom parts, custom upgrades, because again, a lot of those parts are no longer being manufactured. Is that correct?
Exactly, Nicole, you've got it just right. Compressor or whatever put in place in 1947 that's still working. They lose a bearing. They can't get it anymore. So they can change it out for $1 million, but it costs $10 million to change out that compressor, or I can make a part. So that's exactly right. You've got it.
And I just want to thank you, Sandy. I just want to expand on that. So as you know, with the workforce development piece that we support in the community, there are programs at Diablo Valley College and LMC. And in particular at Diablo Valley College, they have a certificate program called Machine Technology. And they have an old school metal shop, wood shop type of learning environment. And those are exactly the skills that we're looking for to support things like Sandy's talking about. If you ever visit our facility, we have a huge machine shop with the same exact equipment of what they're training the students on at DVC for that purpose, right? So that we can make our own parts when needed and our own repairs.
Right. And I'm honored to say that last year they did invite me in to ask about what I thought about the curriculum at Diablo Valley College. So that's wonderful that you get to actually say what's needed out there. We really do need the skilled workers, machinists, AutoCAD people so that we can continue going. Good jobs, good money, just kind of like an old industry, and the young people, you know, just they're not clear about they can have a really, really wonderful career. And women, I'm very much into STEM. And it's just a wonderful way to make a good living with good benefits. And it's safe and it's clean. And yeah, rock on, kids.
And it's local, right? People don't need to
Exactly.
commute to the Silicon Valley. They have more quality work-life balance if they can commute 10 minutes versus 2 hours, which I used to do when I worked down at Cisco. The other thing that you were mentioning, I just lost my train of thought on that, but I'll come back to it if I remember.
Let me add on to that, and I know we have a question from Neil, it looks like, but yeah, the oil and gas industry overall, and I'm looking at California numbers. The average salary with benefits is $84,000, and you've got a employment distribution by education breakdown of about a little over 17% less than high school education, 22% high school, 28% some college or an AA, and 23% BA or higher. And then there's about 10% NA. I'm not sure where that goes. And you've also got a breakdown of close to 30% Hispanic, 13% Asian, just under 6% African American, and about 50% white. But I think it's really diversifying. And you look at the in-house, you know, kind of rank and file jobs, and then there's all the multiplier effects. I mean, you've got about 150,000 jobs in our industry statewide, direct jobs. And if you look at all the indirect and induced jobs, consultants, contractors, all the business around communities like ours that are driven by the folks who live and work in these communities, it's over 350,000 jobs in California. And, you know, a good 40% of the refining capacity is out of the Bay Area. And I'll add too, that's not just the cars and trucks, light duty trucks. It's also the air traffic. We supply all the jet fuel for Bay Area airports, and people forget that. And one of the things this project and P66 is doing is looking at aviation fuel, and looking at that as environmentally safe and environmentally sustainable, not safe, but sustainable jet fuel going forward. So, you know, I think you hear a lot about just transition and energy transition, and there's a lot of people that aren't in our industry that like to say, you know, what they think about that, and that's fine. But I will say that what's going to lead us into diversification of these fuels going forward are the very people who work in this industry, and they're the ones who are doing the projects like Marathon is doing carbon capture sequestration. They're integrating solar in their assets, wind power. I mean, you're seeing more and more of that from the labor community on up to the PhDs who are running the show. We work a lot with Lawrence Livermore Lab and a number of universities to really go on the cutting edge and look at innovating in terms of energy products going forward. It's going to take some time, and we're going to need this product for quite a while because it's affordable, it's sustainable for all levels of income. It's we don't have the electricity infrastructure out there for, I think, what some people would want us all driving electric cars tomorrow, but it's going to take some time, and there's other options out there besides just electric. So I think it's important to have and think of it as an all of the above energy strategy. Now I'll get off my soapbox.
Oh, I appreciate that context and all that insight, Bob. Bob and I were just having conversations yesterday about electrification, and especially in California, there's a huge sentiment on going green. But as he said, there's no. We're not exactly ready for full electrification, as far as availability of charging stations. Our average resident is not necessarily have the money to buy an electric car in the next few years, unless they bring those prices way down or provide subsidies. at all levels, most likely. And, you know, I think about this all the time. People are all in favor of completely getting away from fossil fuels, but those are the same people ordering Amazon every single day, right? Those, you know, those trucks and those delivery vehicles are still powered by petroleum products. Hopefully renewable diesel in the near future. I just want to also circle back, and I want to make sure we have time for questions, but you talked briefly, Bob, about students and that workforce pipeline. And I just want to say that at least the Mount Diablo School District, and I know Martinez, Pittsburgh, Antioch, is probably especially because we're all on the northern waterfront, they all have career pathways now for some of the students. So they don't necessarily push everyone to college. They have like a focused curriculum at the 11th and 12th grade level that prepares them to go out of high school and into a job. It's construction pathways, medical pathways, hospitality. So some of those things where our students can leave high school and start making a good income right away. And so I just want to add this, you know, my background is in corporate communications and public affairs, but I also worked at PG&E for about 7 years. So I have, you know, I think a long history of energy and infrastructure, in my opinion. And so when I talk to these students, you know, they're young, their whole world revolves around Snapchat and TikTok and, you know, Instagram. And I know those are the sexy jobs, Twitter, you know, everybody wants to be in the tech space. But I always try to, you know, help them realize that infrastructure is one of those really stable industries. We definitely need it from here on out. It's not always the sexiest, but it can give them a good income, a good lifestyle for their family. And these jobs are not going anywhere because, you know, people don't think of all the work that goes into turning on your light switch or, you know, just pulling that pump at the station and putting the gas in your car. They just don't appreciate what goes into that. And so that's one of my soapboxes, just talk about these other careers that may not be so apparent to those kids.
Nicole, if I can just piggyback off of that, even on the chamber side, we're very involved with the school district. We're an advisor for one of the pathways that Nicole was talking about, but through the chamber, we also have an education foundation. And that's something that we're hoping to build on and be able to maybe in the future sponsor a student to go to DVC to get those mechanical certificates or to LMC, and they can get their, I think it's a oil refining certificate or something.
E-Tech and P-Tech, so process technology and
That's it.
electromechanical, which are both fields in our industry.
So, you know, the chamber is also very cognizant that those 4-year paths for degrees sometimes aren't what the students are needing, but these career technical skills are what is needed. Like Nicole said, we don't realize how much we actually run off of it. So that's kind of where the chamber is sitting with that as well. And Neil, you've had your hand up for a while, so why don't you go ahead?
Thank you. Hey, Nicole, first of all, thank you for the shout out to the food bank and the shout out for Scare Away Hunger. That's wonderful news that we're looking at doing it again this year. It's a phenomenal program. My question, though, has to do with the feedstock. I had heard rumors, maybe urban myths stuff a few years back, that the city of San Francisco was working with the restaurant industry there to install fuel traps in the drains and all the industry in all of the restaurants over there, and use that as a feedstock to supply renewable diesel for their the city and county fleet of vehicles. I was wondering, is there any possibility that you could work with local restaurants and food processors here in Contra Costa to capture some of that potential feedstock, and that would be it seems like that would be a win-win situation, keeping it out of the waste stream and supplying you and local people with more feedstock.
Thanks, Neil. I'm going to let Bob answer that one, but I do get questions like yours quite a bit, and also about whether we're partnering with waste management to turn some of the landfill material into fuels. So Bob, can you provide some insights?
And I don't have any anything I can add to that other than when just going back to my AAA days, we used to have a program called the Green Light Initiative, and we talked about alternative fuels, and we sponsored the San Francisco International Auto Show, and they did bring in, at that time in the mid 2000s, a lot of like sample cars or sample vehicles that were that could move on restaurant oils and used cooking oils and that sort of thing. So it is a process that's been around for a little bit, but I think it's going to take a company with the scale and scope of something like we're talking about today to, I think, bring it to the masses. But I'm sure all options are on the table. I'll just say that, we're kind of unique. We have, very strict gasoline emission standards in our state. We have, a process that has to go through carb level fuels, California Air Resources Board, and meet very strict environmental standards, very strict air quality standards. And we've seen that for a number of years. So we can't, we're on an energy island. We about 30% of our fuel source, I'm talking about traditional oils now, come from Kern County, primarily in the Bakersfield area, a little bit left on the coast, and we use all that we produce in state. The rest has to be shipped in. It can be trucked in. There's some grandfathered in rail lines within the state. We can't bring it in by rail or by pipe. So product, whatever we get, has to be either in state or shipped in primarily, and then obviously with trucks and so forth. But that's always been a bit of why our prices are higher. We have a number of very strict regulatory standards, cleaner burning fuel requirements, cap and trade, low carbon fuel standard. If I have a graphic I can share at another time that kind of shows where all our gas taxes come from the state. It's about $1.20 that it adds up to $1.10, I think, here in California alone. And then, incorporated in that is the 12-cent increase that we saw that voters okayed a couple of years ago. So we have the highest gas prices in the country. And then you add into the fact that we have the strictest standards in terms of air quality. And then you add in the fact that, we've got limited ways to get product into this state in terms of pipelines, which is probably the most efficient and the safest, or one of the safest. So it's a challenge, and it's why our prices remain higher. So I think when you're looking at sources and feedstock, we also have to look at the distribution and how we get it here.
Thanks, Bob. Just in case I didn't properly introduce you, Bob is from WISPA, which is Western States Petroleum Association. And so that's why he has so much valuable knowledge. And just one more thing for Charles, Neil's question. I know you asked about whether we'd be using local sources. And I just think because, and don't quote me on this, but I just think because of the volume required to produce the renewable diesel, there's no mechanism in place right now, as you know, with our local resource recovery programs here. We don't have like somewhere where you put your cooking oil that they would collect. So that, like I said, there's no mechanism to collect all of that right now. And I guess in the future, when that is one of their initiatives that they are able to actually execute on, then I think that would be a possibility. But for right now, there isn't, I don't think, a way to capture that used cooking oil from homes and businesses locally. Okay. Do we have more questions? I know we have about 10 minutes, a little less maybe. I think, Charles, did you have a question? I thought I saw your hand up earlier.
Yes. Hi, Nicole. I'm Charles Brown. I'm with the Workforce Development Board of Contra Costa County. I'm a business service rep. And so happy to see you all today. Sorry that I'm late. I just got out of another meeting. But of course, we support employment and training through federal funding through our WIOA program, if you're familiar. And we have good partnerships with the colleges, as you were speaking of. And so the Workforce Board actually has received additional funding to support career pathways in high growth industry sectors, as we have priority sectors that we focus on, which was given to us by the state. So advanced manufacturing is one of our priority industry sectors that we promote a lot as far as investing funding into individuals who want to get into the trades. And that's what our primary focus is. And so just wanted to let you know we're here as a resource to provide funding to those individuals. And we do have alliances with the colleges as far as WEO enrollment, where we can pay the costs and provide supportive services for most of the constituents and community members in Contra Costa County.
Oh, thank you. I would love to connect with you after. I don't know too much about the program. I've definitely heard about your organization. And so I think it'd be good for us to connect and at least be aware of what each of us are working on.
That would be great.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll send out the contact list so everyone can connect afterwards too. We did have a couple questions come in from one person on the chat. Do the vehicles that currently burn diesel need to convert their engines to use this product? And secondly, does the miles per gallon change up or down versus current fuels?
I don't believe it changes your gas mileage. And the question about engine modifications, I hear the term drop-in replacement. That's not for layman's terms, but basically you do not have to change anything about your vehicle to pull up to the station and use renewable diesel. It's a drop-in replacement. And so I think that's going to be such a great thing for some of our trucking industry partners. Like for example, my uncle owns Waters Moving and Storage, and they have a huge fleet of diesel trucks, and they're really looking forward to it because that's going to help them, be a part of this change for our state. And the other thing like Waters or Sandy and her business that she works for, we are really, if you value Marathon in the community as one of our vendors, or even hotels where our our workers come in from other states, or we use catering companies, printing shops. I mean, I think we supply business to a lot of our vendors, and so I mean, if we go away, that business goes away. And the same thing with our community investment funding. If we're not here, that's close to $1 million that our local community is not in support to the nonprofits. So when we get to that part with the open comment period, I would just ask anyone who is in support of the project to visit the website now, sign up for updates. That way you can get the email that says our open comment period is now active, and then you can write a letter. You can use the turnkey email. That would help us, because I think even though residents in support is a good thing, I think the supervisors are also want to hear, that it's important to businesses. It's important to community groups like the food bank or the school district, or people that really value our presence, and that it would be missed, right? So just want to put that out there as an action item.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Nicole or Bob?
Yeah, actually, I'd like ask another question out there. We have Food Bank has a fleet of 15 trucks ourselves. How can we access renewable diesel in the near future?
From what I know, it's just going to be at our stations, right? ARCO, and if we're still supplying to Costco and Safeway, I think you'll pull up to the pump that you always go to, and then you'll have your green handle, and it'll just say renewable diesel.
You're not going to have like trucking, like the Flying J, the truck stop kind of stations.
I don't know. I mean, Bob mentioned that we supply to a lot of the local refineries supply to a lot of these sort of mom and pop type of gas stations. I don't know, Bob, do we supply to like Rotten Robbie's and those type of stations?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they're all out there. So I don't know the breakdown of the 4 in Contra Costa and the 1 in Valero over in Solano County, but they provide all the all those fuel products to the non-branded stations. So I think you'll see that network grow and adapt to meet demand, and the demand will be there. We know that, and I'm sure you guys will plan accordingly.
Well, we'd like to support you because
Yeah.
you support us.
It's awesome.
Thank you.